Hey, I'm Srini, creator of Maximize Your Output with Mem. Have you ever wished that you could have all your files, regardless of format, neatly organized in Mem with just a snap of your fingers? Well, today I'm going to show you a workaround to make that wish come true. We're going to use a single folder in Dropbox or Google Drive, couple it with automation to import any file into Mem, complete with the actual text of the file. We're talking PDFs, transcribed, audio, and more, all seamlessly integrated into Mem, all from a single folder. Now, let's get to the video. What I'm going to show you in this video is how you can save pretty much anything to Mem, regardless of file type, whether it's a PDF, whether it's an audio file, whatever format it's in. I'm going to show you how to save it all directly into Mem, all from a single folder. So your first step in this entire process is setting up a Dropbox folder where you're going to call it your Save to Mem folder. So what does that look like? Well, in this case, what we've got here is just a simple folder where we have Save to Mem. So you can see here, this is my Save to Mem folder. I've enabled it on my desktop just so I can quickly access it from Finder, but this lives inside of Dropbox. Now, this is for my specific Save to Mem folder, but for our example in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually be using a Save to Mem folder that's inside of another folder here. The idea behind this is that it simplifies the ability of importing things, because I found that I had multiple zaps all kind of doing the same thing where different file types were stored in different folders, and it didn't seem to make a lot of sense. And after working with a client to import thousands of notes into Mem in multiple formats, I thought this would actually be a really more streamlined way to approach this going forward if you have subfolders and all that stuff. But in this case, we're just going to go through an example where you have a couple of different files inside one particular folder. And you can see here we have a PDF, we have an MP3, and then we have one that has a specific file name, all of which will make sense when we get into the actual Zapier configuration.
Productivity, I've got just the thing. It's a free custom second brain plan that's tailored to your unique needs. This plan will help you manage your information more effectively and focus on what truly matters. It's a customized blueprint for building your second brain in Mem. To get your free plan, visit maximizeyouroutput.com/custom. It's a game changer for your productivity, and I can't wait for you to try it out. Now let's get back to the video.
So now that we have our folder set up where all this information lives, what we have to do is configure the automation that is going to bring these different file types into Mem. What we've got here is a Zapier setup where it triggers when there's a new file in Dropbox, and then it splits the actions based on the type of file. If you want to be able to save everything to a single folder, you have to have some rules that determine how that information will be processed before it gets put into Mem. So let's start in this case with the MP3 file. So one of the cool things about this is that we can use an MP3 file and then we can transcribe it using OpenAI. The first thing you're going to do when you set up these path steps, you probably want to name them based on the file type. Now, you might have 100 types of files. Like, obviously, you want to try to get this narrowed down to maybe, Google Docs, PDFs, MP3s, whatever it is. I have transcripts from both videos and podcasts, so I want to be able to make some changes to those files based on whatever happens here. Or basically say, okay, if it's a video transcript, do this. But in this case, we're working with an audio file. Now, one thing that is really important, when you send audio files to Whisper from Zapier, you have to actually format the URL that you get from Dropbox, because the standard share link doesn't work if you want to be able to use it within Zapier. So all you have to do here is use a formatting step where you replace the DL equals 0 with DL equals 1. And then you will get a new URL, which you can see here. And this is the URL you're going to actually send to ChatGPT or Whisper to transcribe this audio. So in this case, what we're going to do is we have an action. You can see we're going to use the output from step 4. We're going to tell it transcribe audio file. We want it to give us a response in text. And this is also really important. So I missed this. I typed in English here and it didn't work. You want to type in EN just so you get the file in English if that's the language you want it to come in on. So what we're going to do is we're going to test. You can see here that I've already tested this once, but let's go ahead and retest it again. And what we'll see is that this will give us the output from that audio file. So you can see here that if we look, there is our output data in terms of what is actually in the content of the file. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take that and we're going to create a mem from it. So here, this is kind of one of those things that's a matter of personal preference. I like to have all my titles of every single mem be H1 files because it makes them easier to find. And so then we have our title. And so for the next part, what we want is we want the transcript. So you might want to put a space here just to give it, a little bit more room. And now if we click on this link right here, what we'll see is that this actually has the content inside of Mem that we just imported using the Zapier automation. So now that we've done a audio file, let's look at something that is a bit more complicated, something like a PDF file. So what we want to do is we want to go back up here. And this is actually really important because when you're testing, you'll need to configure these different types of files. So in this case, we have a markdown file, and we can see here that we have a couple of different files. So it looks like it hasn't found a PDF file. So let's see if we can get it to pull some new records. Okay, so when you're not seeing a file, often the reason for that is because of the fact that it either is not detecting the file. One other reason this could happen is that you haven't made the file available online. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to basically just make a copy of my PDF files. So that way, when we do refresh it, it'll actually work. So I'm going to do that really quick in Dropbox. And what we'll do is we'll go back to our folder here. And you can see here we have video example PDF. So let's just duplicate that. So now if we go back up to the top and we say find new records, it should find a new record because of the fact that we've just created a duplicate of a file. And sometimes you won't see this come through. The best way to fix that issue is basically just log out, change the app up here. So now you can see that we have a PDF file. So what we're going to do again is we're going to configure a path step. So in this case, we want to create a new path step. And the way that we do that is we've named this path steps PDF. So now we have to come up with the rules. And so what we're going to basically say is if the extension exactly matches .pdf, then it goes down this path. So what you should see is a test that passes. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to set this up to take a PDF file. Now, one thing that is kind of funky about PDF files is they're hard to convert. And often the easiest way to convert a PDF file, as silly as this is you first have to convert it to another file format. So in this case, what you would do is we would use a tool like Cloud Convert, and we would convert it to, say, a Google Doc or a Word doc, and then we would get the content from that to be a markdown file eventually. And so you might need to do a little bit more work on this step than you would in other steps, but the same process applies here. So we're going to take our direct media link, which is different than before, not your download link. But in this case, what we'll say is that we want it to be a docx, which is a Google Doc. And then we're going to tell it that the input format is a PDF. And what this will do is it will then send our file names. We're going to name our file. And the other thing you have to do is you have to tell it what you want the extension to be on the file. And then when you do this, it basically will send a request to Cloud Convert to convert your file into a doc file. And then you probably have to do the same thing one more time. The nice thing is that once you get it into a Google Doc, we can just retrieve the content of that and then convert that content into a markdown format right here in Zapier. So in this case, we'll go ahead and just pass this, but I'll explain exactly what you do here after this step. So once you have your Google Doc, you'll need to upload this doc somewhere, and then you need to retrieve the content that will basically take you to your next step, which here you would do an upload step. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find that file in that particular Google Docs folder, and you're going to convert it to Markdown using a formatter step. So here you have the option to use text. So in this case, what would happen is you'd be converting HTML to Markdown, and your input data would be the information that you got from the Google Doc. So that's a basic setup of how you import PDFs. One other thing that I recommend for dealing with PDFs is to actually send the converted PDF that is in a Google Doc to ChatGPT and say, clean this up because of the fact that it was such a mess. It was in PDF. It needs to be cleaned up for input into Markdown. And then you would basically just continue and create your mem. Finally, we have one last step. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use a file name as an example. So in this case, for example, we want to bring in things that are video transcripts. So if something is called a video transcript, I want it to just keep the file name as video transcript. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and we're going to find a file name that actually has video transcript in the file name. And there you can see, okay, this is a video transcript. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick that. And in this case, we're going to choose this path. And you can see here, we want to make sure that the file name contains video transcript. And for this one, because of the fact that these video transcripts are already in Markdown, all we're going to do is create a mem from them. And if we do a test, what you'll see is that this automatically goes into mem. So we basically have talked about a couple of different ways that you can import different file types into mem. For audio files, you might want to transcribe them, which requires you to format the URL, OpenAI for transcription. And then for video transcripts, this is just an example, but like you might have different file types or different file names based on different functions. Finally, you have this other notes field. And this is actually good for things like basically importing files that are already in Markdown, but you just want to bring them into mem. And then the PDF file. The PDF files, again, are going to be the ones that are going to probably give you a little bit of a headache simply because of the fact that you have to first convert them to a Google Doc, then convert them back to Markdown. But overall, this whole thing streamlines your process for importing information into mem. So now let's actually go and recap everything we've talked about. So the basic idea here is you're going to first set up a folder in Dropbox or Google Drive, whatever your preferred cloud storage is. And that folder is going to be where everything gets saved. And if you have the Google Drive desktop app, you can do that in Google Drive as well. Then what you have to do is you want to configure your automation to work with different file types. It could be Markdown files, PDF files. Again, you need to specify the parameters for what you want these file types to be and then what you want Zapier to do with those files. So for example, if it's an audio file, you would want Zapier to transcribe that audio. If it's a file that has a specific name, you might want it to leave the name as is, or in my case, for example, when I do podcast transcripts, I have it remove the text podcast transcript before it comes into mem because I just want the name of the guest to be the file name. And then finally, what you do is you configure your last step, which is the easy part, and that is to basically configure the step so that it creates a mem from the content in the previous step. So what you can see is that you have a path for audio files, a path for video transcripts, a path for other notes, and a path for PDF files. Now keep in mind, these are just examples. Yours might be different. So really, this gives you a lot of flexibility, and it actually simplifies the process of bringing a lot of information into mem. If you have been using mem for quite some time and you want a really simple workflow to save things into mem that aren't necessarily easy to save directly into mem, this is a really cool workaround that saves you a ton of time. And you can basically just dump everything into a single folder and everything will get handled by the automation from there. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.